My wonderful mom rented a car and picked us up in Waterton from the trailhead the night before. We had dinner and celebrated with Ollie, High Roller, and other hikers in town. Pilgrim even got us a bottle of champagne that we popped back at our hotel. After another meal in Waterton, we decided to see the park by car rather than foot. Going to the Sun Road was unfortunately pretty socked in, but it was still relaxing. We continued our drive south to Flathead Lake, where we met up with trail friends at Franzia's parents' house. We enjoyed one last lovely reunion with hiker trash that we'd shared so much trail with. The next morning, my mom came to get us to continue our travel south. We were flying from Bozeman to Albuquerque, where we'd meet kids' parents, spend the night, and eventually continue on to Chama. From Albuquerque, we drove to Chama, making a stop in Santa Fe where we'd taken a week off trail back in May. That evening, we made it to the tiny trail town in northern New Mexico that had been our jumping off point for the San Juans. We revisited our favorite spots in Chama and got ready for one last week on the Continental Divide. In the morning, we drove up to the pass, across the Colorado state line, and 3 miles north of the New Mexico border. We said goodbye to our families and started walking south. The changing aspens made me excited to be back here in the fall, but otherwise, the 3 miles to the border felt very similar to when we'd hiked them in May. The biggest difference is this time we weren't turning back around to hike into the snowy San Juans, but rather continuing south to trail unknown to us. I was pretty worn out, maybe from the last several days of travel, and fell behind the group. Eventually, Kay waited up for me, and we hiked the rest of the day together. We even ran into another northbound friend, Miss Hap, who we hadn't seen since Colorado. She was finishing up the section going north. We walked well past dark to a campground where we had the luxury of eating dinner at a picnic table and enjoyed not worrying about grizzly bears. The road leaving the campground the next morning was lined with changing aspens and made for a lovely, crisp fall morning. It's day 2 of filling in our New Mexico closure. We did 23 miles yesterday from Cumbres Pass to a campground in Carson National Forest. So that was our 3rd time hiking the section from Cumbres to the Colorado border since we tagged it last time. Yesterday was super tough. I had a lot going on emotionally, probably one of my toughest days on trail for that reason. And also we've been at lower elevation. The north end of the trail in like the Bob and Glacier is at like 5,000 feet a lot of the time, and we're back at 10 and 11 right now. So I think we were all feeling the change in altitude quite a bit. It's, you know, it really shows you how much that makes a difference. And oh, look at that. The aspens are changing. Such an awesome time to be back here because of that. But yeah, it was a tough day, both emotionally and physically, but we made it all the way to our destined spot. We night hiked for about 2.5 miles, and my legs just felt dead. I don't know if it's also because we've been doing lower mileage, probably a combination of all of the above. Today we've got about 25 miles and we're meeting kids' parents at a road crossing so we can camp with them, and it's also made our food carry really light, which has been phenomenal. Went a little bougie with heavier items. Because of that, I've gotten orange cream cheese bagels, string cheese, the works. We also met our first trousseau of this section. So he's pretty early. Had to deal with some gnarly stuff in Glacier, just, snow. And there was a bear closure earlier this season. But yeah, overall, the weather's fantastic. I did forget sunscreen, so that's why I've got my bandana under my hat, try and give myself some protection. Hopefully, that'll keep me from roasting, because we are high up and it's quite sunny, but it's not hot like it was last time we were here, which is so nice. And there's water, which is awesome. We were kind of joking earlier, there's a stock tank later today that a southbounder commented on, was like, it's got algae in it, I'd skip. And we're like, oh, that's not bad, just wait until you get further south. But I can understand why you would feel that way when the water sources north of New Mexico are usually much better.
I remembered how much I did not miss filling up from questionable water sources and carrying extra water to avoid said sources. I became reacquainted with accidentally following cow use trails and taking breaks next to giant cow patties. We made it to a road crossing where we happened to run into kids' parents, who we weren't supposed to see for another 4 miles or so. They took our packs and made the final miles of the day much easier. We had burgers around the campfire and enjoyed the morale boost from the extra support. I woke up to a hole in the mesh of my backpack, chewed by a rodent who I had allowed the opportunity to find my trash bag, but the hole was small and nothing could ruin my morning with breakfast around another campfire. I took off before the rest of the group, knowing they'd catch me later in the day. Ken and I met some new southbounders and walked through on and off rain all afternoon.
It's been spitting rain and hail on us all day today, on and off. And it just rained pretty hard for like 5 minutes. We stopped to put on our rain pants and it stopped. And then now we're just hearing really loud thunder. So, welcome back to New Mexico. Right now we're on what is hopefully a substantial shortcut. Hopefully we'll be able to get in like 25 miles today and cruise into Ghost Ranch tomorrow. I am headed into Ghost Ranch today. Started the morning like 19.5 miles from the actual like Ghost Ranch waypoint. And so far it's been still like aspens and pines, but I'm excited. I think we're gonna be in like a red rock / like sandstone canyon on our way in, which is the part of New Mexico I've been excited to come back for. We took a couple shortcuts yesterday, but the significant one, well, significant in the sense that it was memorable, we took at the end of the day. I think it might have been the old CDT. We saw a CDT marker on it, but we took a road for a while, and then at the end, it turned into trail, if you can call it that. Obviously not maintained. There are a lot of bow downs, not so bad that it really slowed us down that much, just like kind of stepping over them, not any nasty tangles or anything. Went through that, made it through there, and then when we popped out on the other side, we were supposed to have met up with the red line, the gut hook red line, but it ended up being just kind of a field. A lot of overgrowth and like no trail. So we cross-countryed it back until we met up with a real trail. There's a lot of areas in this section where I think the trail's been rerouted and our maps have not been updated, so you just kind of got to figure it out as you go. And we weren't sure if we were ahead of or behind Ollie and High Roller, because we were like, well, that shortcut might not have saved us that much time. They went the other way, and apparently that way was also a mess because of the maps not being updated. And so we got to camp and we're like, they weren't there, but we hadn't really like definitively said we were camping. So we were like, oh, hopefully they know. So we set up our tent, ate in our tent, because we're not in Grizz country anymore. And I don't necessarily recommend that, but man, it's nice sometimes. And they showed up a little while after it got dark, so worked out perfectly.
As I approached Ghost Ranch, the scenery changed dramatically. We went from cow-filled pastures to stark sandstone canyon walls populated by desert flora and fauna. Within a mile, we went from aspens and evergreens to cacti and tumbleweeds. The canyon leading into Ghost Ranch eventually became washed out, but easy to follow because there was really only one way to go.
So the trail was just a nightmare, and I see this sign, and now I remember reading comments from Nobos like, don't go up Box Canyon. Well, I just came down it, so oops.
When we got to Ghost Ranch, kids' parents had a room reserved for us, and we enjoyed a buffet we'd been hearing about since the spring. It reminded me of summer camps from years ago. The hike out of Ghost Ranch lived up to its name and felt almost ghost town-esque. Trails were lined with old plant markers that had clearly not been maintained in years. At one point, we even passed abandoned buildings and had to make our way through some barbed wire blocked sidewalks.
We left Ghost Ranch today, so it's day 5 of filling in our New Mexico fire closure, which means I've only got one more day, which is super exciting. The rest of our group is kind of scattered. When we were here last, Kid ended up ripping some Luco tape off a blister, and it took a chunk of skin out of his foot. So he actually made it 11 miles the next day to a road and was like, this isn't gonna be good. So he hitched in. So he has another day of 25 miles that actually worked out really perfectly for us coming back, for him to be able to fill in that section too. And then Ollie and High Roller have to Grants to go to. It's been really pretty. It feels like we're actually in New Mexico now. The first 4 days mostly we're up in pines and aspens. Still kind of felt like Colorado. But now we've got that blazing sun and the desert rock and the poke plants, which are kind of destroying my legs because the last day in Glacier, the trail was really overgrown, so it kind of beat up the bottom part of my legs. And then there's been some unmarked trails here. There's been a few sections that are a little unmaintained, little overgrown as well, and with poke plants, so it's ripping up some of my scabs. But all good right now. I'm on a dirt road. Be on a dirt road for a little while. I might try and jog a little bit. The trail into Ghost Ranch was kind of wild. It was super steep and loose rock, and I think when they have their monsoon season, the trails just kind of get washed out. And so we came into Box Canyon and it was kind of all over the place, but again, we made it, so no worries there. And it was really pretty, so at least if it's going to be the CDT doing CDT things, then, well, I guess this isn't even technically the CDT, it's the Ghost Ranch alt, so I can't even be mad. At least it's gorgeous. And yeah, so we got there in time for the dinner. They do buffets for every meal, which is rad. We stayed in a shared dorm room that Kid's parents kindly reserved for us. So we got to sleep in a real bed, which is sweet. And, the morale is low, so stuff like that is really helping us out on this last stretch that we have to fill in. And now we've got 28 miles to do today. I think I'm 5 miles in, and it's about maybe 10:30. So it's been good so far, and hopefully continues to be. I think I saw a little tarantula earlier. I don't actually know. I'm gonna have to ID it later, but I saw a spider. That was fun. I saw a snake yesterday on the road, and I saw some frogs in the Arroyo del Yeso. I know I'm butchering that, but anyway, keeping myself entertained. So far, I'm moving at a really good pace. Just got to stop at a pit toilet at a campground. The river's right there. Looks muddy, but I think there's a spring past the river. And I just got a Trail Magic banana. I think from a thru-hiker. They were driving by. She was driving her by in her car and asked if I needed anything, and I said no, I think I'm okay, but thank you. She said, do you want a banana? I was like, I mean, if you're not going to eat it, I'll take it. And then I saw an AT bumper sticker when she drove away, so that was cool.
I ran into Kid at water around 2 p.m. and we hiked for the rest of the afternoon together. We had a final steep climb before it was all downhill to our meeting point. We crushed the climb and pressed on, with the promise of McDonald's keeping us motivated.
This is what it's like in a hiker motel room.
We stayed in the same motel we had the last time we were in Cuba, and the familiarity was comforting but a little sad, knowing we were at the end of our hike now rather than the beginning. We decided to hike north again out of town, meaning my last day would be going in the same direction I started.
So today is my last day hiking on the CDT, at least for this thru-hike. We made it to a road just outside of Cuba, about 25 miles away last night, and Josh's parents, Kid's parents, came and picked us up, which was very sweet. It's a big day yesterday, 28 miles. I kept a really fast pace in the morning, slowed down a bit in the afternoon. Got to the car just after dark, picked up McDonald's when we got into town, got to sleep in a bed, which was awesome. And then this morning we drove to, we're actually going northbound now. We were going southbound for this fill-in section. We just drove to the end of the pavement outside of Cuba and hiking back to the road we hiked to last night. And yeah, I'm so ready to be done hiking. But at the same time, I'm definitely feeling a little sad again. It's just kind of unbelievable that this summer is almost over. Well, it's fall technically already, but that, you know, my journey as a thru-hike on the CDT is coming to a close. And it's sinking in that I'm not going to see all the people anymore who I've met throughout this journey, even though we're lucky enough to have Ollie and High Roller with us still. And we'll be seeing some friends in Wichita too, as they're coming through on a road trip. But yeah, I don't know, I just feel so lucky to have been able to do this at all, and so grateful for the experience and for everyone I've met along the way, and even grateful for all the really hard shit, because it's made me tougher and a more capable outdoors person. And I know it'll only serve me to keep going, pursuing bigger and bigger adventures. But right now it's definitely a little bittersweet. The sun is setting, almost all the way set, and I am taking my last few steps on the CDT. Only about 0.2 from the road.
Just before sunset, I made it to the meeting point we had set with kids' parents. Somewhere at a random road crossing in the middle of northern New Mexico, I took the final steps of my CDT Thru-HIke. The emotional climax had definitely come and gone in Glacier, so it was more of a relief than anything to be done, and it felt good to know I didn't leave this 150-mile stretch unfinished.
Cheers. All the way done.
The next day, I hung out with Kid's parents while he finished his last day. He officially finished his hike at the water cache he'd hitched away from months ago, and we were there waiting for him when he did. That evening, we started our drive back home and our official return to the, quote, real world. Luckily, we already had plans for Ollie and High Roller to visit us, and the comforting awareness that although this adventure was over, there would be many more to come.